What's going on, guys? My name is Matt, and recently Corsair released a new line of gaming pre-builts that are pretty epic. There are configurations with all of the latest Intel 11th gen and 5th gen Ryzen CPUs, along with the latest NVIDIA 3000 and AMD 6000 series GPUs. Now, to be completely honest, this is one of, if not the best pre-built I've ever tested, but at over $3,000, it's very expensive. Today, I'm going to be unboxing, testing out, and giving you a rundown on this PC, along with whether or not you should consider picking one up. So if you are in the market for a high-end pre-built, you definitely are going to want to check this system out. There are a number of retailers who sell these PCs, and you can even get them directly from Corsair's website. When mine arrived, I went ahead and opened it up right away. When unboxing the system, the first thing we find is a very clear and concise quick start guide. Taking that off, we see this PC is packaged with closed cell foam, which for a high-end PC like this is a very good idea and makes it safer for future transportation. This is because it can survive more impacts compared to the cheap styrofoam you find in a lot of cases in pre-builts. After pulling the system out, the only other thing I found in the box were the warranty guide, power cable, and Wi-Fi antennas. With the system out, I pulled off the outer plastic sleeve and, per the instructions, removed the side panel and Instapak protecting the internals. Instapak is more expensive than other packing materials, but if you're shipping a high-end system, it's a very good idea to use it, and I'm glad to see it here. Upon removal of the packing material, the first thing I noticed was how clean the system looked and was cable managed. I'll talk about this more in a minute, but first impressions were really good. Before putting the side panel on, I went and removed the back plastic protector on the panel, then reinstalled it and flipped the PC back onto its feet. With that done, I was ready to hook it up and start testing it out, but before we get into the software and performance side of things, I want to talk about the parts in this PC and what other kinds of configurations of this same model are available. So for the CPU in the system, Corsair's using the Intel Core i7-11700K. This is a very powerful 8-core 16-thread CPU running on Intel's Rocket Lake architecture. This i7 is great for gaming, but is also great for more intensive tasks like streaming and even 4K video editing. The CPU has the ability to boost all the way up to 5 GHz, but the K at the end of the model number means it can be overclocked for even more performance. If Intel isn't your thing, then Corsair also offers models with the latest 5000 series AMD CPUs. This CPU is being cooled by a Corsair H100i RGB Pro XT. This is a high-quality 240mm liquid cooler that provides a ton of cooling headroom for a CPU like this i7. It's got RGB fans and RGB on the pump block combo, which looks great. Also, as far as I know, this cooler is the cooler used on every configuration of this PC. The i7 is sitting inside of the MSI Z490-A Pro, which is a mid-range Z490 board offering a bunch of great features like front panel USB-C support, plenty of PCIe expansion, and a nice neutral color scheme. The only thing I'm not a big fan of for this board is the back panel I/O, which only has 6 USB ports, and I would have liked to see a motherboard selected that is 8 or more. For RAM, the system's using 32GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro running at 3200 MHz. This is plenty of memory for high-end gaming, streaming, and even editing. 3200 MHz is plenty fast, and the RGB on these modules are super bright and offer some of the best lighting I've personally seen on RAM sticks. Any configuration you get will be using these same type of memory modules, but with 16, 32, or 64GB depending on the model. So next, let's talk about the graphics card. The one in the system is an NVIDIA RTX 3080, which all of you probably already know about, but if not, it's one of NVIDIA's best current gen graphics cards capable of super high-end 4K gaming. This is using the Founders Edition cooler, which performs and subjectively looks amazing. Now for the GPU, you have a ton of options. There are configs with 3060 Ti's all the way up to 3090s, along with AMD 6700 XTs and 6800 XTs. For storage, this config is using a 1TB Corsair branded NVMe SSD. This is plenty of storage for your OS, applications, and a good number of games, but for a system this high-end, I would have liked to see more storage included. The NVMe drive in the system performs well as a boot drive and is being cooled by the heatsink on the motherboard. Powering the system is the Corsair RM750, which, as the name implies, is a 750 watt unit. It has 80 plus gold efficiency and overall is a great pick for this system. It's nice to see a high quality power supply in a pre-built, as this is usually the area a lot of system integrators cut corners in to increase their margins. This unit provides plenty of clean power to the entire system and is fully modular design with all black cables. Finally, let's talk about the case and the fans, which are the same on all configs. The case Corsair went with is their 4000D Airflow, which is probably my favorite case to be released in the past year or so. It's a space-efficient ATX mid-tower case that looks super clean and offers great airflow with a full mesh front panel. It has a power supply basement and plenty of room for cable management, which allows Corsair to easily make this system look super clean. Speaking of which, I think they did a very good job on cable management. It's not perfect, but it's about 95% of the way there and a fair bit better than I've seen from other pre-builds. For case fans, along with the 2 on the liquid cooler, Corsair includes 4 other, 3 at the front and 1 at the back. These are RGB fans that look and perform great. What's nice about these and all the Corsair RGB components is they're easily synced and controlled through iCUE, which I'll talk about later. So now that you have an understanding of the hardware in this PC along with options and other configurations, we can now talk about the software and performance side of things. Powering the system on for the first time, I was greeted with a Corsair boot logo and then quickly brought into Windows. As I began to look around the Windows installation, I found pretty much zero bloatware. The only thing separating this from a stock Windows installation is Corsair iCUE, Corsair Diagnostics, a shortcut to information about PC help, and a Corsair branded wallpaper. Other than that, there was nothing hogging up system resources like unwanted antivirus programs or other pre-installed bloatware. One great thing about a pre-build is going from the system in the box to fully connected and booted up took all of 10 minutes. At this point, I started to download some games for testing. While those were downloading, I headed into the iCUE software to configure my lighting. iCUE is by far the most robust RGB software available, and every light in the system is easily customized through it. Even the white GeForce logo can be brightness adjusted, and the RGB LEDs on the GPU too. This all combines together to allow you to configure things exactly to your liking. So now let's talk about performance. The PC, as you can expect, performs amazingly. It crushes 1440p and 4K gaming along with other tasks like streaming and editing. I only tested 5 games, but you should be able to get a good understanding of the type of performance this is offering. Let's start things off with the Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a really nice looking and hard to run game. I tested this using the built-in benchmark with the ultimate preset. Doing this at 1440p resulted in a 113 FPS average with 1% lows of 70. This was really great performance and probably could be up to 144 with lowering the settings a bit. At 4K, the system put out a 72 FPS average with 1% lows of 52, again at max settings, which is great performance in my opinion. Next up is Shadow of the Tomb Raider at the highest preset using the built-in benchmark. At 1440p, the system put out 131 FPS average with 1% lows of 85, and at 4K, the system put out a 77 FPS average with 1% lows of 61. For Borderlands 3, I tested at ultra settings with the built-in benchmark. At 1440p, the system put out a 101 FPS average with 1% lows of 61, and at 4K, the system put out a 63 FPS average with 1% lows of 45. Next, I tested Cyberpunk 2077. This doesn't have a built-in benchmark from what I can tell, so I just tested some fast driving through the city and outskirts of the city. I also tested at the highest preset using ray tracing. At 1440p, the system put out a 66 FPS average with 1% lows of 39, and at 4K, it put out a 44 FPS average with 1% lows of 26. This is a good testament to how hard Cyberpunk is to run, as the system couldn't even average near 60 FPS at 4K ultra settings. Finally, for the heck of it, I decided to test an esports title in the form of Rainbow Six Siege. I tested using the built-in benchmark at the highest preset. At 1440p, the system put out a ridiculous 385 FPS average with 1% lows of 247. At 4K, the system put out a 255 FPS average with 1% lows of 211. Obviously, the system is super overkill for this game, but if you have a 4K 120Hz display, a system like this is what you need to get the most out of it. Overall, as expected, the performance is amazing. With an 11th gen i7 and RTX 3080, there are only a few other configurations that are gonna beat this out. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this is probably the best pre-built I've ever used. It's using all high quality parts, it's packaged well, it's very well built, performs amazingly, and the list goes on. But I need to address the elephant in the room, the price. At $3,200, the system is not cheap. Looking at the cost of all the parts and OS in this system, assuming you could get an RTX 3080 at MSRP, it would be $2,050. This is $1,150 less than the asking price. Now, obviously you can't get a 3080 at MSRP, so it's hard to judge how much this PC really should cost, but we can compare it to other pre-built companies. For example, I did a review of a Redux PC with comparable specs that currently sells for about $2,600. Now, I will say the quality of the parts in the Corsair build are a bit higher, but it also costs $600 more. So is the price worth it? It's honestly hard to say. This Vengeance pre-built is amazing, but you need to ask yourself whether or not it's worth it for you. Personally, it would be hard for me to justify spending 20 to 25% more on essentially the same system, but obviously that's a decision you'd have to make up on your own. There really aren't any flaws I could find with this system. I have always described Corsair products as premium products with premium prices, so if you're willing to pay that premium, then I honestly don't think you will be disappointed. Just to add one last thing, like I said, there are a bunch of different configurations, and personally the one I would go for is the version with a Ryzen 5 5600X and RTX 3070 that comes in at around $2,200. This is a much better deal in my opinion and is much easier for me to recommend. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more PC and tech related content in the future. And as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.